talking about Saturn Ketu, time to be humbled or maybe humiliated, and we're really believing it with those planets in Sagittarius. Hey there, it's Sam. I'm making this video from Shakti Fest, a yoga and spiritual gathering here in the desert. You can hear the birds and the yoga class behind me. I'm going to walk over and talk about Saturn and Ketu energy. First, we'll just walk through here. Interesting gathering for sure. A lot of people here in the desert. So right now, Saturn and Ketu are close together. And they're going to continue to be close together for quite a while. Back there. And they're in Sagittarius. And they're moving in sync with each other for months. And this is going to be creating, as it is creating, a lot of issues that are hidden and buried. I see these people working through their issues behind me. And one of the things about Saturn Ketu energy is it's going to be bringing up a lot of your hidden and buried fears and things that you've been running from perhaps for lifetimes and lifetimes. The lifetimes come from Saturn, or I'm sorry, from Ketu. That's getting dark. And the fears come from Saturn. And right now, the Saturn Ketu is in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the sign ruled by Jupiter, and it's related to our beliefs, our belief systems. So we have a lot of beliefs about what is driving our fears and what is and how those things are so ancient and deeply embedded. You know, I had a story a little earlier today. I was standing at my booth, and you know, it's interesting because when people walk up to my booth, sometimes they have a certain amount of you know, you might say arrogance or something, where they're sitting there, or I'm sitting at the table, and they're like expect that I'm going to wait on them, or you know, kind of like, you know, impress me with your Jyotish, and maybe I'll buy a book, or maybe I'll talk to you or something. It's not that much, but sometimes it is. And a dude walked up, and I could tell that was totally his vibe. So I didn't really say much. He just said, you know, I just said, hey, well, I actually just walked up and then just kind of stood there, and I engaged him. It was my buddy Cole, and I engaged him, and I said, so you're interested in astrology and, you know, yoga, Vedic astrology? And he goes, oh, I know all about Jyotish. And just kind of looked away, and I'm like, all right. And then I was doing some stuff, so I just started doing it. I didn't really pay much attention to him then. And then often that'll get people to engage because it kind of flips the switch a little bit. But then, you know, I sat in the chair, and he was just standing in front of the table. And he said to me, he goes, so what about this Saturn retrograde? That's all I said. And I said, well, what do you mean? Well, what about it? And I said, you know, so I said, I don't know, what about it? Do you have any questions about it? Or you said you understood Jyotish, so do you have any questions about it? And he's like, well, yeah, tell me about it. And I said, well, I'll tell you about it in what way? Like, what do you mean? What about it? Well, Saturn's a planet. Sometimes it goes retrograde. Right now it's retrograde. What, you know, are you talking about now, like how it's affecting things now? And then he's just like, well, I'm just giving you a container to shine Jyotish on me. So again, he had this was his point of view, which I could tell. I can see through that stuff pretty quickly. And then I said, well, I got plenty of opportunities to do that. I just kind of smiled at him like, do you want to have a conversation about it? Like, what don't you understand? And then he's just like, well, that's all right. I'll just find it somewhere else. And he walked off. And I was like, what occurred to me is that in that exchange was his Saturn Ketu, because that's literally what Saturn Ketu tends to bring, is this is this kind of fall from grace, a lot of it based on our sort of arrogance. This is why Saturn brings humility, often humiliation, and not like I humiliated him or he was humiliated, because that's not what happened, but literally Saturn, I was like Saturn, and Ketu like coming back at him, because he's like, you know, his energy was very clearly something along the lines of, I'm important, impress me. And I was like, no, I don't feel like I need to try to impress you. And again, this is what Saturn can tend to do. We're so arrogant, we got it all figured out, and Saturn comes and says, oh yeah? And humbles us, right? That's the, if he took the lesson from that, it was him sort of being humbled, because I wasn't looking for an opportunity to shine Jyotish on him. I mean, I would have been happy to, but not in that setting, because it wasn't going to penetrate. Somebody's like, I already know this. And then again, that point of view where it's like, you know, impress me and maybe I'll buy a book. Like, again, I will shower Jyotish on someone forever if they're interested, and if they're open and, quote, humble a little bit. They don't have to humble themselves before me, but don't be arrogant like he clearly was, or expecting that I'm going to do that, because again, it's not because I wouldn't, it's because I know it's going to be wasted in that sense. Because, you know, when you come to these things, I probably have 15 or 20 deep, meaningful conversations about this, because I'm here to teach people and to teach them about what it really is. And if someone is sincerely interested, even if they don't know anything about it, in fact, often that's where I'll have some very long conversations, and some of my best students have come from those moments, right, where they're just open and they're wondering, and I ask them questions and we have a conversation. Again, but someone who's like, well, you want me to buy your book, and you know, that arrogance. This is what Saturn does to bring us down. I use the story because it's, you know, it just happened, but also, you know, this whole quality, I haven't been paying attention to the sun, so this might be dark. So this whole quality of being humbled by our mistakes and our shortcomings and our mental arrogance and mental preconceptions is a lot of what's happening with Saturn right now. And based on where it is based on where Sagittarius falls, the house from the Ascendant, not from the moon, that's going to really dictate how you're experiencing this more than anything else. And again, the fact, it's not just Saturn is retrograde there, but it's also with Ketu, the south node, which brings in all of those old preconceptions and deeply embedded hidden patterns. Because Ketu is about that past karma, that those hidden patterns from the past that we're unconscious of, right? Where we have these deep sort of preconceptions about the way things are supposed to be. Oh, hey, how are you? Good. About how things are supposed to be, and how we lose track. We don't see that's what we're doing. Like that gentleman didn't have any awareness that, you know, that interaction went that way because of him. Of course, also because of me, and that's my Saturn too, I guess you would say. Maybe missing out. If I would be more, I don't know, something or other, something else would have happened perhaps. But, you know, I already know I'm quite open to go in any direction, and having that sort of interaction with him, I'm sure he walked away thinking, oh man, that guy's a real idiot, not realizing that your approach has as much to do with the response as anything else. And who knows how many interactions like that he would need to have, or anything else, to introspect, right? And how many things we miss out on because of our projection, right? And so really noticing how you project your fears, and how much unconsciousness is in your fears, how much you believe in them, how much you really believe it. You really believe it's justified. You do. You really believe it. Again, and this believing in it is the Sagittarius part. Because no matter what, we're believing it. You're buying it. You're believing that those fears and those old habits are justified. Well, it's because this happened, or my father was this way, or my mother, or this or that. So again, Sagittarius is just our philosophies. And we all have a philosophy about something, about a lot of things, about everything to some extent. So people that have a lot of planets in Sagittarius are very philosophical, and it's not just religion or our beliefs about the higher things. It's our beliefs about relationships or about career or about all kinds of things. And so the Saturn Ketu in Sagittarius is really, of course, it's a time to examine how much your beliefs and your unconscious projections and whatnot come from your fears. Again, like for instance, the young man who approached, you know, it could very easily be that, you know, he wasn't, you know, because we often project onto other people. So his perhaps fear of not being paid attention to, like let's say when he was vulnerable and would ask questions and would appear vulnerable, let's say in front of his father or something like that, which is what he would have to do in front of me, because, you know, I wrote these books on astrology. I'm obviously understand it better than he does. But of course, he couldn't show that. He had to show this kind of rigid, I know about it. Again, very Saturn from his point of view. I get it, I know it. Like he was kind of impenetrable, right? That's what he approached me with. I know it, so what about this? And not being open like, oh yeah, hey, yeah, I'm interested. I've studied a little bit. And that's usually the way people approach, right? Someone who's silent and still and not saying anything but wants to get into that. Very Saturn-like from his point of view. Probably has that because he's convinced, or in his mind he's thinking, well, I don't want to look stupid in front of this person. He probably respects the knowledge, maybe respects me, doesn't want to look silly in front of me, so he acts like he knows something. But again, his rigid nature is almost predetermining my response. Or I would sit there and maybe he's often used to the fact that when he does show up in that way, most people, I know, because most people will be like, oh, hey, hi, yeah, oh, yeah, da. And they'll try to convince him and he'll be like, I don't know, what about this? I don't know, what about that? Because that's what I would get from this person. I already know, because I've been around that a lot. I say I already know. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I wouldn't have, but I think that's what would have happened. It's been my experience enough that when people walk up like that, when they're not open to listen, you're just kind of wasting your words a little bit. Again, you just heard me say it too. I already know what would happen, blah, blah. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that wouldn't have happened with him. So this is how people project their things onto each other. And, you know, I'm being honest that maybe I projected it onto him too, at least after he approached me that way. I was much less open to saying anything for the same reason. Because I don't want to waste my time and energy on this dude when he's just going to have this wall up. Again, see, so it's my projection as well. And so the interaction went that way, right? So notice how this happens. We create, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And Ketu especially, Saturn too, because Saturn is the planet that's most related to our old biases and preconceptions, but certainly with Ketu as well. Again, so you get them both there, and it's all about these sort of like rusty old chains and biases and preconceptions that are deeply embedded, right? Where we really believe it and we really feel it, and we're not letting go of it so easily. And so again, a lot of that is what we project onto others and create these like self-fulfilling legacies and tape loops. And I say legacies because those kinds of behaviors, they may, you know, maybe they come moment to moment, but these are generational as well. These are the kinds of biases that we've inherited from our parents and our father and the way we were treated and our mother, and we pass these family legacies on, you know. It's hard to break those patterns. And so these are big issues right now. You should be noticing all your big issues, especially around your fears. Look at your fear of being embarrassed, your fear of being humiliated, your assumptions of what's going to set forth those triggers, and not just, you know, noticing those things, but notice how much you really You believe it. You believe it's true. You saw me in this video. I'm believing it. Like, I believe that's what was going to happen, right? And so, to some extent, I also participated in the exchange, right? And, you know, it was more gentle than that. I wasn't by any means aggressive, but when he asked, well, what about this Saturn retrograde? Or I didn't even say this Saturn. He said, what about Saturn retrograde? And I said, I don't know. What about it? And I knew it would be, I wanted to, sometimes when I'll say that, the person will be like, well, I mean, right now, you know, it's retrograde in the sky and blah, blah, it's in Sagittarius, or so it'll get people to open up a little bit. But his response was, well, I'm asking you, aren't you the expert? Like, so it's kind of like that. I'm like, well, you know, actually my response was, well, I'm the expert, but your question is kind of like saying, well, what about these trees? What about that? That was my response. I said, well, it's just a very general question. What about Saturn retrograde? I said, what about it? You talking about something cultural or right now? Or it's like saying, what about all these trees? What about them? And he didn't really get it because I was like, it's just such a general statement. Have anything more specific you wanted to ask about it? He's like, well, that's why you're here. You're here to, aren't you the Jyotish? Didn't you write the book? I'm like, yeah. And I'm just like, so I gave it a couple chances, but in my mind, I was also probably not helping too much because I didn't cooperate. Maybe if I would have cooperated, but I had a belief that it was going to go like that, and so I put little feelers out, but I wasn't so cooperative either because I could feel his sternness. And again, for me, my old programming is when someone comes up and they're like this kind of rigid, impenetrable thing, I'm going to try to help you, and you're going to just be this wall, so I don't want to do it. But we really believe it. So we got to question those beliefs and question our biases and our projections, especially around our fears, and particularly around things like fear of embarrassment, guilt, a lot of guilt, things that you feel guilty about. One of the best things you can do is introspect about things where you feel guilty. And you know, one of the best remedies for Saturn energy, and it's one of the hardest things to do, is apologize. Apologize for your mistakes. Again, this is what keeps Saturn energy stuck. So when we apologize and we humble ourselves before our arrogant preconceptions, it loosens up all that energy. It helps to unravel all of that nasty, gnarled up, kind of twisted karma. And think of how good it feels to have someone apologize to you for something that they did wrong, and what that unlocks in you. When someone apologizes to you for something that was wrong, automatically you sink into more forgiveness, right, of them. It's hard to not forgive someone who sincerely apologizes, right? Especially because people make themselves vulnerable when they do that. Looking at someone who has apologized, especially when they are sincere, because they actually say what happened. They don't go some backhanded apology because they want something, which becomes, you know, they're not like, all right, I'm sorry, you're right, but you would have blah, 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 but if you didn't do that, or whatever it is, that's not an apology. That's, I'm giving in because my arrogant temper tantrum didn't work. Because I tried to be cruel and mean and you didn't forgive me, now I'm going to begrudgingly apologize because I still want a connection with you, but I want to make sure you know that I'm angry still. Again, none of that crap just doesn't work after a while. Like years of that or whatever, like if it's with a person or, and again, notice this in yourself. Notice how sincere your apologies are. Are they apologies because you want something? Because you still want the connection and you don't want to admit you're wrong? Again, that's the arrogance. That's where that twisted up arrogance of Saturn can be hung up, where it's, you know, and it's afraid of humbling. It's afraid of being humbled. So humbling yourself and being humbled are all kind of happening now. Notice these areas of life where you're being humbled and how so much of it refers back to your old wiring, your old programming, how much you still really believe it, again, because two malefics in Sagittarius, which means, you know, the ancient texts are very clear. Two malefics destroy a sign. Again, I don't usually use that kind of language, but you see why it happens. When it says it destroys it, it means it's destroying the quality of that area of life to some extent, destroying the worldly manifestation of it so that you'll look at it in a deeper way. Again, Sagittarius things are our beliefs. So as I've been saying, it's simple but powerful. Saturn Ketu has been destroying our beliefs about things. And we have a lot of beliefs, and yes, we believe them. And I'm not just saying, oh, my belief will never be shattered because I believe in God and I believe in, you know, yoga or this, that. I'm not talking about that. That's a belief system, or that's a spiritual system, but I mean your beliefs even about that. Like you believe it is this way for this reason or whatever. All that's getting really challenged now. And because Saturn and Ketu are going to be dancing around for several more months, you want to really ponder this humbling aspect and this being humbled and this fear of being humiliated and whatnot. Like the gentleman this morning at my table, he probably was carrying around some fear of being humiliated in front of someone who he perceived as an authority, for example. Maybe me, the same kind of thing. With me, it's wasting my time and energy and have it not be appreciated or whatever it is. And you want to look at the houses wherever Sagittarius is in your chart. And again, you know, in my 2019 forecasts, I went over this in great detail. So for Aries, of course, it's 9th house areas of life. For Taurus, it's 8th house. This fear of, you know, transformation. And I'm sorry, go ahead. Moss? Yeah, that's right. I can just edit this out. Yeah.
No, thank you. I'm going.
Oh.
I'll see you at 1:30.
Yeah, okay, we'll see you at 1:30 then.
Okay. Cool.
All right, cool. And so, you know, for Gemini, it's 7th house, this kind of fear and this, you know, being humiliated with your partners and being humbled in that regard. And for, you know, Cancer, it's 6th house, which is about hard work and effort. And for Leo, it's like 5th house stuff, with that, you know, which has to do with children, creativity, other kinds of things where, you know, we express our heart's desire and we're afraid it won't be, you know, appreciated, or it won't manifest or bear the fruit that we want. So this Saturn Ketu is really bringing us to this point. In some ways, you could say it brings you to your knees, but what happens when you're brought to your knees? Why are you brought to your knees? It humbles you. And we need to be humbled because we're arrogant. And I'm talking about you. Again, I say this stuff in videos and whatnot, and people think, oh yeah, he's talking about those arrogant people. I'm not arrogant. I'm actually very sensitive. No, you are arrogant about many ideas that you have that you think are right. No matter what anyone says, you're not going to listen. And those are the areas, in many ways, that are being pressured the most right now. And particularly as it relates to the Sagittarius quality of life, because again, Sagittarius is where we actually really believe things. We have very strong beliefs, right? And it's being challenged quite strongly now to humble yourself, right? If you want to get to heaven, you got to learn how to pray. On your knees, boy. Isn't that what they said in the YouTube song? If you want to get to heaven, better learn how to pray. On your knees, or better learn how to kneel, or something, whatever it is. So that's a big part of it. So you want to really ponder this. You want to look at the house wherever Sagittarius falls, and that's where you're getting that pressure, right? And you're being pressured to go down in that way, right? You could go through all the signs, right? Virgo, it's 4th house stuff, which is your feelings and your heart, and really connecting with your heart. Libra, 3rd house, which is interest, friends, trying new things, right? Scorpio, 2nd house, which is, you know, values, feeling appreciated, your value system. Sagittarius, 1st house, which is your very identity. You know, Capricorn, it's 12th house stuff, which is, you know, loss, letting go, allowing things to just happen. Aquarius, 11th house, which has to do with the public and, you know, your relationship to the collective. Pisces, it's 10th house, work. So these are areas where you have a lot of ideas and beliefs because Sagittarius is that sign, and it's getting pressured a lot because Saturn, Ketu are there. So just making this quick video here from the beauty of the Joshua Tree Desert. Great friends here. I'm always glad to come and you know, tap in. I love the desert, but the desert also has its own kind of Saturn qualities. It's dry, it's harsh, it's you know, but it's also very hot, so it brings in that kind of heat, like you're getting cooked in the desert, you know. So I hope you're having a good one, and you take care.